All right, in this video right here, we are going to learn how to work with significant figures. What this means is that in a number, in a number you're given, let's say, number 100 to 1,000, not all 6 of those digits are significant, depending on how it's written. So we're going to learn how to count Sig Figs in numbers, and also how to work with those numbers with Sig Figs for adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing, because there's rules for that. So rules for counting Sig Figs. So you should have this. It is a little picture of the United States. And as we know, the United States is bordered by 2 oceans on the West Coast and the East Coast. We have Pacific Ocean on the West Coast, and we have Atlantic Ocean on the East Coast. The way that we determine what numbers are significant in a bigger number that's given to us is by looking at whether or not we have a decimal. And so this is where Pacific Ocean and Atlantic Ocean come into play. Pacific Ocean is on the left-hand side. Atlantic Ocean is on the right-hand side. So if our decimal is present, we're looking at the Pacific Ocean. The P's go together. So decimal is present. That means the decimal is there. We look at the Pacific Ocean. If the decimal is absent, that means we look at the Atlantic Ocean. So the A's go together. So if decimal is absent, we look at the Atlantic Ocean. So the rules are really simple. If you do have a decimal, so if your decimal is present, we deal with the Pacific Ocean. All this means is you are going to start counting from the first non-zero digit you hit on that left-hand side, because Pacific Ocean is the left-hand side. So we're going to be given a number, and we are going to start counting once we hit that first non-zero digit from the left. And so non-zero means, of course, it's not a zero. So it's a number between 1 and 9. Okay. Atlantic Ocean, so if our decimal is absent, that means there's not a decimal in the number. We're going to start counting once again from the first non-zero digit, but this time, since it's absent, that goes with the Atlantic Ocean. Atlantic Ocean is on the right-hand side. So since it is absent, we're going to look at the right-hand side. So we start counting from the first non-zero digit on the right-hand side. So let's look at some examples. So in this number here, 1.0070 meters. First thing you're going to look at is there a decimal? As we can see, there is a decimal. So the decimal is present. So if the decimal is present, that's the Pacific Ocean. We look at the left-hand side of the number. So left-hand side, that's the left. And we start counting once we hit the first non-zero digit. So once we hit a number that is not zero, that's when we start counting. So I'm on the left-hand side. Actually, let me pull up a... So I'm on the left-hand side. Here's my first non-zero digit right there. So I start counting from here. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I have 5 Sig Figs in this number, because here's my first non-zero digit, and you keep counting till you hit the end of the number. Okay, because that one has a decimal. All right, so 5 Sig Figs. Okay. 17.10 kilograms. Once again, does it or does it not have a decimal? So this one also has a decimal. So the decimal is present. So that is the Pacific Ocean. So we start counting on the left-hand side. We are going to start on the left-hand side. So this is the left. Okay, so we start counting on the left-hand side. We're going to start counting once we hit the first non-zero digit. So once again, my first non-zero digit is the 1. So I start counting here all the way to the end of the number. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So that one has 4 Sig Figs. Okay, here we go. So now we have 100,890 liters. So once again, ask yourself, does it have a decimal or does it not have a decimal? In this case, there is no decimal. So in this case, the decimal is absent. So if it's absent, that's the Atlantic Ocean. The Atlantic Ocean is on the right-hand side. So we start counting on the right. So remember, this is the right-hand side. So we're going to start counting on the right-hand side. we start counting once we hit the first non-zero digit. So on this side, this one is a 0, so that doesn't count. This is my first non-zero digit. So I start counting here till I hit the end of the number. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this one also has 5 sig figs. Okay? Because I start on the right-hand side and I go all the way to the opposite side. So this is my first non-zero digit, so I start counting here. This 0 is not significant. Okay? So we're going to ignore that. All right. 3.29 times 10 to the third seconds. So here's a little trick with scientific notation. First of all, there is a decimal, and you're only looking at this part. The numbers with export, this right here, we don't care about. We only look at this part. So there is a decimal, so the decimal is present. So we're going to look at it to the left because that comes from Pacific Ocean. This is my first non-zero digit. So we start counting until we hit the end. So 1, 2, 3. So that one has 3 sig figs. Here's the little trick with scientific notation. With scientific notation, your coefficient is always significant. Whatever digits are here, they are all significant. So this could have been 3.29000000000, and every single one of those zeros would have been significant. You would have had to count them. So with scientific notation problems, anything that's at coefficient, you're going to have to count as sig figs. All right, so try this one here. So you can pause the video and try it. All right, so decimal's present. We start counting from the left-hand side. Our first non-zero digit is here, so that's the 5. So we count 1, 2, so that one just has 2 sig figs. All right, 3,200,000. Try it out. The decimal is absent, so that's Atlantic Ocean. So we start counting from the right-hand side. The first non-zero digit we hit is the 2 from the right, so we count 1, 2. So that's also 2 sig figs. Okay, so that's how you count sig figs.